Welcome back to the Athletics Check podcast with me, your host, Michael Feuerbach, and then we have Anthony Denu and Tyler Atlassian Maps. Don't forget about it. It's time to talk about our two favorite things. We got RPGs and we got sports. How are y'all doing today?
Good, man. Thanks for the intro.
Yeah. I won the vibe check.
There you go. You won the vibe check. I'm doing wonderful this morning. Thank you for asking.
You made quite the vibe check today. A 1 and a 2 in the vibe check.
Yeah.
This didn't roll so well.
This is much different than how we're normally doing the show, because usually it's a weeknight. We've got our beers, occasionally me with a mule going on, but today we're doing a morning version, a Sunday morning recording. And
church version.
So we're getting caffeinated. Yeah. It's a whole new thing for us. The vibes are totally different.
We got uppers instead of downers today.
That's right. Yes, and the combination our hearts just absolutely love.
Yeah,
that's right. Good old coffee this morning. Second cup of coffee for me this morning. Feels good.
I just got one as big as my head, so that's kind of
a nice cup.
I like the way you guys do it.
Yeah,
is that a Goku cup?
Yeah, it's my Dragon Ball Z cup. If I can turn it
yeah.
around without spilling anything. Yeah.
It's a beautiful cup. It's orange, my favorite color.
I love it.
It's got the logo on it. Mine is just hugs and kisses. X's and O's and a heart on my white mug.
Yeah.
And my cup is actually for protection.
Yes, dude. Yes. You did it. That's so great. Oh my god, I love it.
Oh my god. That's really funny.
What a perfect fucking setup for a joke we didn't see.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Great. I'm really proud right now.
Did you guys plan
end the show 2 minutes in? The show.
Well, that's it for Athletics Check. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Join us on Instagram and YouTube.
Right. Yeah.
Amazing.
The morning version. People are like, this is their best stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. It's almost like morning talk radio. Like we're just in a whole different vibe at that point.
Oh, that's outstanding.
That's really funny.
Oh, I can't believe that was within arm's reach.
Yeah.
Did you plan that?
Keep a cup within arm's reach?
I got
for protection.
It's unbelievable that it was there. And once one of you guys said cup, I was like, I don't even have to move, and the joke is there.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I got to keep more random stuff within arm's reach.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know.
That's hilarious.
Unreal.
Starts looking around. What do I got? What do I got? That's funny.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't have anything funny around me.
Oh my
I
goodness.
just have RPG books and a tarot deck. Yeah.
What kind of books you got over there? And how does that tie into
Sure. I got all my D&D books over here, like my player's handbook and my Tales from the Yawning Portal to run adventures in. I've also got RPGs like Ultraviolet Grasslands over here. It's a great system.
There we go.
Like not D&D specific, but it's also an RPG.
Is that your copy?
That's my copy of it.
I didn't know you had a copy of that.
Michael, were you thinking it was yours and that he took it, or what?
Well, I own 2 copies because when I first bought the
one's
copy,
for the bathroom.
Yeah, I bought the copy
bathroom
upstairs,
and then bathroom downstairs.
I saw another copy at the game store, and it was bigger than my original copy that I bought. And I was like, "Oh, did they add new stuff to it or something?" I bought it. It just turns out that the paper was like different and like of better quality, so it was like a thicker book. And then it was 2-ply. That's why I keep it in the bathroom. So,
that's good.
So yeah, and now I have 2 copies, but I was like, did I lend him my second copy? I don't remember. Anyway,
the answer is no. I got my own.
Yeah, cool.
That's a super fun system. Super different. Really unique. I feel totally feels like a
psychedelic wasteland.
Psychedelic wasteland,
so,
like 80s vibes.
What is that? Sounds really cool to me, but I don't understand the basics of what you would do in that, and and just the differences of that between D&D and that type of game, an RPG specifically, or something that's similar style, that kind of thing, but not from the D&D.
Yeah.
So
Michael has a lot of knowledge
universe.
I have limited knowledge on this, so I just want to say, as a baseline, it's straight up, like there's different rules and it's a different setting. So where D&D is more like fantasy based, think like medieval kind of stuff with a mix of magic. UVG feels completely different in like wasteland and stuff like that. But also like straight up the rules, the stats, the way that you make your checks are kind of different. The way that you store items and go about your adventure are totally different. They just came up with different rules in that regard. But Michael did run us through a couple sessions of UVG.
Yeah.
So he definitely has.
And we used so UVG is an interesting setting, but it's as of right now, it's mostly a setting. That book is like a bunch of different locations and places that you can go to, and the guy who authored the book also is the artist of the book.
That's awesome.
He's incredible. His art style is great. It feels very reminiscent of like 1970s science fantasy stuff, like very, very flavorful in that genre.
Okay. Like the Star Treks and Star Wars,
Star Wars, heavy metal, the Ralph Bakshi kind of like rotoscoping sort of stuff like that. Just if it can't, like, even some of the books that my parents had when I was growing up that were like sci-fi and stuff like that, like
very cool,
Tales from the Dying Earth and stuff like that, like all that kind of stuff. It's very in that genre. It's at the back of the book, he has like the skeleton kind of a system that he uses for his game as well. It's not fully fleshed out, and like I've been following him on his Discord and like following his progress as he's making he's actually coming out with the second edition of that setting and also of the rule system sometime soon. It's on like pre-order right now or something, or just anyway. But super cool system, mostly setting. D&D, less of a setting per se and more of just a rules system. They kind of like built it in such a way that it can be flexible, but it also kind of does lean towards like a medieval historical sort of in fantasy vibe, just like, but it's kind of by default maybe like high fantasy, like you would think like
Lord of the Rings.
I don't know. Yeah, Lord of the Rings is really the best allegory for it. But I mean, you could kind of shift it towards Game of Thrones. You can kind of shift it towards Conan the Barbarian if you want to, and those different genres of fantasy have different vibes. And of course, at this point, we've seen all sorts of different like D&D, like D&D as a high school, like D&D as like, I don't know, rabbits and stuff running around. It can be used for a lot of different things. It's just how much do you want to stretch your imagination, it kind of has its own lore too. Like D&D has been around for like 50 years at this point, almost. And I think actually, let's see, 74 was when it first came out.
So next year is the
next 50th. Year it'll be 50. It'll be its 50th anniversary. And then, so it's had a lot of stories and stuff written in its own kind of setting. If you can think of it like that, like Greyhawk and Forgotten Realms. And next year, I think they're coming out with Planescape, which is the big announcement that Wizards has made.
Bunch of settings basically where they have stories take place, like the D&D movie that took place in, what was it, the Forgotten Realms or something?
It was in Forgotten Realms,
which
and it had a lot of allusion to that setting.
So this is like giving you a background for the things that the storylines and things like that you'll put into play in these areas.
So people will have maps of these areas and say like, this city is a certain distance away from Neverwinter, and there's all these things in between, and this town was destroyed, so you can go to the ruins and fight monsters there and have adventures just based on these things that have already existed for other people. It's just kind of like, well, right now I'm making my own setting, Like as we're playing it, I'm creating things and adding towns and like adding ruins or adding forests with magical elements. So it's a way for dungeon masters and people playing the game to just go like, okay, let me just take Forgotten Realms or something else that's already created, but I create my adventure in it with the rules that like, okay, it takes 2 weeks to travel to this town. There's snowy mountains up in the north over here, whatever. It's just you have the option of using that element of somebody else's creation, which is cool.
Yeah.
Because some people don't want to get super into it and have a OneNote that's full of just lore documents like I do of just when this town was created and how long have they been around, what's the agricultural trade around in that area and stuff that you don't really want to think about that I'm working on right now. So
I love the detail.
I love that stuff though.
I love the detail in that kind of stuff. And you know, that's the kind of, if we're talking about like this versus that, like homebrew campaign settings versus like written like campaign settings, like modules and like pre-written stuff is an interesting kind of like what do you want to do, because you know, and this kind of goes back to our previous episode where we were talking about when you were making a setting, you know, do you are you a gardener or are you an architect? You know, feels like sometimes if you are buying a module, you know, or a campaign setting that's already well defined, that's like the architect has already put in all of the like the spots, you know, already kind of built the framework for your setting, and then you just have to fill in the gaps.
So for someone like me, as beyond like what's a step before beginner, you know, that's me. These things would be helpful in many ways to just have an idea going into it.
Yes.
Yeah. Of like, I don't need to make stuff up on the fly. I could just read about it in some book that somebody made up. There are these NPCs, non-playable characters who are already in the town that are established and have relationships with other people that I could talk to. Hey, what's going on with you? Oh, well, goblins stole my goods. Okay, I can help you out with that because that's already written down for you that this person has trouble with goblins.
Okay, that's extremely helpful, especially because then that would give me more background to then advance to where, like what you're saying, where you have all sorts of crazy details built into your years-long campaigns.
Yeah, exactly right.
There's no way to know, but the amount of people who have played through The Lost Mines of Phandelver, which is an adventure and setting included in the D&D 5e like basic rules, it's like that's like the default starting adventure for D&D, and like you said, it's really helpful if you're just starting out and you don't really know. Sorry, I got something in my throat this time.
I'll jump in. Actually, my first time ever DMing was The Lost Mines of Phandelver, and I was just like, okay, I know kind of how to DM. This thing tells me everything that's in the area. First thing they do is run across a dead horse in the middle of the road on the way that they're going, and what's going on here? And then they get ambushed by goblins. Okay, already established. I know how many goblins. I know what their health is. I know what their weapons are. And then how do we resolve that and go down the goblin road or continue with your quest? And it actually was really nice to just have everything laid out for you. All you have to do is kind of remember the rules and think about that kind of stuff rather than improvising and creating like I'm kind of doing more now because it's my world and I can feel like I can make excuses for the things that are happening, or I can say that no, this is how it really is. I can change the canon, basically. Anyone who's seen Spider-Man knows what I'm talking about.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. So as a dungeon master, this is giving you an idea of what the space is and how to use the space.
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say that's pretty fair. Yeah.
And it kind of introduces you to like maybe like what the goals are of the game, you know, and kind of like what the common situations are in the game, and kind of gives you a baseline for that. It's like training wheels a little bit, you know. It just helps you along, but then once you have kind of done it for a little bit, you can decide whether or not you want to. I mean, some people can just like run modules all day, you know, and that's fine. I think there is so many talented, creative people out there making content that if you just want to run like adventure modules all day, every day, till the end of time, there's nothing wrong with that, you know?
Can you
oh yeah,
go ahead, sorry.
Well, I mean, an example of that would be like, you know,
exactly.
When I was playing in our home game in the Brellwood, and we were rotating DMs. So me and my roommates were taking turns being the DM, and then the other people would play as players. A lot of times what we would do is just find a module online and then run that module for the rest of us. At least that's what I was doing. I was just finding a lot of modules, and then like you can read the module and be like, okay, and then like you're going through like an editor almost and being like, well, that doesn't quite work, but I can fit it here. This NPC, we already kind of have someone like that, so I'll just rewrite that character as this person, you know. And then once you have that skeleton in place, and then you fill in the gaps a little bit, then you run with that, and that was very fun. We ran that game. We did, I think, it was sort of a challenge for us, but I think we did like 20 nights of D&D in a row. Like every night we were playing.
You're able to just take a module, plug it into your world, and just run it, because it kind of just works that way. They also have a setting that he referred to as Brellwood earlier. It's in their homebrew world, but it's kind of a place where they've set up so that a bunch of people are living. Anyone from the town can go out on an adventure. You know, you can make a character and he lives in the town, and then like, hey, you have a reason to go out and do something, go out and do it, come back that night. And the adventure is over, and then the next day in real time a new adventure can start, because that one is kind of resolved, and that's a play style within its own. I forget what they call it.
We were basing that idea off of the West Marches style of gameplay, and that is a particular style of gameplay that often has a great number of players, like sometimes 20 or more players in the campaign, but you never necessarily are playing with all 20 people at once. So the onus of like coming up with the ideas for the adventures in a West Marches campaign is sometimes based on what the players, it's player driven sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. Like the DM says, okay, you're in this town, here are some points of interest around you. Now, what do you guys want to do? And then one party can say, well, we want to go investigate the wizard's tower that we saw on the horizon. Another group of people can be like, well, we want to investigate this cave that's over here that's supposedly overrun with kobolds or something, you know? And then the DM says, okay, well, Saturday I can work this guy in, and then Friday night we can work this guy in. And usually a West Marches campaign has one or two DMs, but they don't really switch as to be players, as far as I know. So our style of that was kind of based on West Marches, but we were like creating a bunch of characters and like rotating the DMs, and then like and then sort of doing it that way. But that also, I've talked about this in previous podcasts, it kind of ran into its own issues doing it that way, where like we were kind of stepping on each other's toes sometimes with the things we were running. We learned a lot during that. Yeah.
We've had campaigns with multiple DMs where it's like we were going and running a ship through some islands, and I had run an island where the volcano erupts, and then it becomes a chase. If you're not fast enough, you get overwhelmed by lava. And then as soon as that session was done, one of the players said, that was one of my ideas. We were going to absolutely do that when I DM next, so I'm going to change my plan. So it is a little bit stepping on the toes when you do switch DMs like that and have plans. Yeah. But I mean, it's all about adaptability and what story you want to tell anyway. So it kind of works out, and having the modules to plug in just makes it easier to play more.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask a little bit more about adventure model examples or other module examples and how those all play together, and maybe just some of them, like the more simpler ones.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you there's also like a distinction here between like adventure modules and like setting books sometimes, which is an interesting sort of distinction too, where like an adventure module can be sometimes also setting neutral, right? Like, I have a lot of zines and stuff that are like, they're adventures, but they have no setting, so they can kind of be plugged and placed into anywhere. But like, there's a lot of different settings for D&D that have come about over the years. And what was your question again?
We just played again. Well, we just
I got
played
excited
game.
about stuff, and I forgot what the original question was.
Just to add on what you're saying, Michael, we just played a game recently. Well, we were about to play my home game, and one of the players canceled, so we came up with something else to do, and Michael brought over a bunch of stuff.
That's true.
We pulled a certain game system, so it wasn't D&D. It was this game system called Black Hack, which is kind of very similar, but more like simplified, where it's like there's a warrior, there's a cleric, there's a wizard, there's a rogue or thief or whatever, and it's kept very simple. And then that doesn't inherently have a setting, so we grabbed a setting from another module and was able to play this game with this thing from different people on the internet or people around the world that put together things, and you make an RPG that's very, very niche. We did a bar crawl one where we go around a town and are trying to figure out some mystery with a poison king
that's
or something.
So cool. That's so cool.
And the module is the points. The point crawl is the different bars that you go to in this town. It's called Barkeep on the Borderlands, which is also kind of an allusion to an earlier D&D module. I think it's Little Keep on the Borderlands or something like that. Anyway, so it's kind of alluding to older D&D, but it's also like its own thing, and it's a bar crawling adventure that you go and you're trying to find like the antidote to like the monarch's poisoning and stuff like that.
And we could have done that with D&D 5th edition. We could have done that with 1st edition, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. We could have done that with Ultraviolet Grasslands, because it's just an idea of a game or story that you want to tell, but then you get to play your game that you want to play, like UVG or D&D. I really loved it. I really love the idea of taking two games with different rules and different settings and making them work together. But you can do that with anything. And that's kind of a great session 0 thing to go over as well when you're DMing, of like, hey, we're going to play 5th edition D&D because I'm familiar with it. Yeah. However, what kind of story do we want to tell? Do we want to go through this module about a vampire king? Do we want to go and make a magical school and we're all just students taking classes and getting level ups because we're studying magic? Kind of take whatever you want to and tell whatever story you want to tell. And I think that's the fun part,
Yeah.
Coming up.
Is there a story that the players want to tell that we can kind of create something?
Create a very involved background, like that's gonna lead our story in a certain direction, and we'll follow that. Yeah, I kind of like it where my players have in-depth backstories, and then I also have a story to tell, and you intertwine them as a DM of like, I'm telling this story about war in my home game, but then all these other things with the characters are also having at the same time, resolving their background issues. Why are they the way that they are? What put them in a place that they're adventurer heroes? Yeah, like telling a TV show kind of.
You have the main storyline, and then you have a bunch of plots. Yeah.
Yeah.
Playing and sometimes writing D&D, if you're a TV writer, you don't need any explanation on how to run a D&D campaign, because that's basically probably the closest thing.
Yeah. And sessions are episodes.
Sessions are episodes, and campaigns are seasons, or adventures can be seasons, and then quests, maybe like
something.
The campaign is the entirety of the show, right?
I love the analogy.
Buffy, has seasons, but then over the course of the entire show.
That was your go-to?
I don't know. Yeah, sure. Why not?
I didn't watch.
Did you ever see the movie?
Supernatural, anything.
Did you ever watch the movie? It came out a few years before the show. Luke Perry.
There was a movie of Buffy.
A couple years before the TV show. It's a different person playing Buffy, but it's a very 90s vampire movie.
You know what?
Borderline comedy.
I think I knew about it because they reference it in the first episode, right? She burns down high school.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they reference it in the first episode of the TV show, and I think that's all I've seen of Buffy. To be fair, I think I've just seen the first episode.
Don't try and walk backwards on this one.
It's true. I've seen more Supernatural. That's the more show that I'm familiar with.
I gotcha.
Yeah,
it's a good episodic kind of show. Yeah,
but those are on my mind because there's a game system called Monster of the Week, which is literally directly kind of inspired by shows like Supernatural and Buffy, where it's like, every episode is just a new, exactly, like X-Files, and it's like
you have a problem, you don't know how to solve it, you go and do some recon, you figure out how to solve it, and then you have to face the problem again.
Next week, new location, new monster.
Next week, new location, new monster.
Yeah,
same detective.
That's right.
Sam and Dean.
See, I love that. And we can get into the weeds a little bit. I don't know how much X-Files you guys have seen. As a kid, it scared me. And so it wasn't until as an adult that I was able to go back and watch it and have fun with it. You laugh. And there's Vince Gilligan who did Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. Like one of his first big things was the X-Files. And I don't know if he started right away, but then got bigger on the show as it went along. But while I do enjoy the Monster of the Week thing, I much prefer the overarching story and Mulder's sister and do these things really exist and whatever. Like I love that world and everything, and like how the overall story, not just this time, but there's so much fun stuff in there too. Like and young actors too, like
that's
young
the
Jack
intertwining,
or whatever.
You know, you intertwine those episodic stories with the overarching story, and that's kind of part of what makes it compelling. You can have resolution on like the session, you know, the episode that you're playing, and then you can also look forward to like, but what does that mean for next time, you know? Yeah,
I like that the most. I think I call it stakes, having stakes in the character or in the story, because it's like, one shots are super fun, but like, what are the stakes? What is this guy going through? What does my character really want out of this, and where could my character go, and what can my character overcome in the future? Like, we killed the ghost or whatever, but like, what next? You know, is there more ghosts? Is there, what else is going on in my character? And that really helps me to start writing a character, developing a character for D&D. I'm way more compelled of like what the stakes are, how far I can take them. You know, as compared to just like, I don't know, I got a cool rogue, I'm optimized to do the most amount of damage. My dexterity is 20.
Calling me out a little bit.
Yeah, I do call you out on that. Michael's very keen. Well, he's played a lot. He's had a lot of characters, so he's very keen on like what is the most like effectiveness I could have as a character. And for me,
that's the fun. That's one of the fun challenges.
It is
coming up with an effective character. You know, sometimes though it's based on a little bit on what's the point of the campaign too. You know, like we did play in a campaign where my roommate ran a game online that was going to school, right? And I was like, okay, what kind of a character do I want to play? Oh, I'll choose a half-elf lore bard that gets like 7 skill proficiencies, like just out the gate. And I'll play a character that's an overachiever at school, like a valedictorian, you know, and just, you know, I want to take all the classes. I'll take extra classes. I'll do work on top of that so that, you know, I just want to play the character that's like overworked and stressed kind of. And that was me building towards that, but it was also kind of born out of like, oh, this is a really interesting build. A half-elf lore bard can get a lot of skill proficiencies very early on. And then they get jack of all trades on top of that, which they get half proficiency on all other skills that they're not proficient in. And, you know,
a lot of D&D jargon all at once. Even for me, I'm like,
anyway, the real ones know. The real ones know.
The real ones know what it is. But yeah, there's a certain element of that where it's like there's actually so much fun and so much more impact when a character has flaws and things that they're not good at. In fact, that's something that I try to emphasize more when we play D&D of like, no, like it's okay to have negative scores.
Have some weaknesses. Have some weaknesses.
Well, yeah.
And with that character, his greatest strength, I turned into like his biggest flaw as well. Where it's like, okay, he's good at all of these things, and the way he's like that is because he's like a workaholic overachiever, you know? Like I'm pushing this character who's like very skill proficient and like good at a lot of stuff, but it's because he maybe doesn't know how to relax, you know? And then that can be like the interesting like like flaw of that character.
But one
because I agree that the flaws are integral to making a character.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just like this superhuman god-like character who's just going around crushing everything. But I think one of the best parts of D&D is where, like, let's say I'm playing a wizard and I've been solving all these arcane problems, but I have no strength. I need to rely on my other party members to have strength, or to have the charisma to talk to the guard, because I'm not focused on being charming. I'm focusing on what can I mentally do next to solve the next problem and fight God.
Have you guys played, I'm going to bring this to video games now, like Dynasty Warriors or X-Men Legends or Marvel Ultimate Alliance?
A lot of Dynasty Warriors for me.
Yeah. That's one I'm more familiar with. Yeah,
I mean, I know it's a lot of button mashing and stuff like that, but if and I know more about the Marvel Ultimate Alliance, X-Men Legends, and stuff like that. But you have 4 players at once. Everyone has a different player. It's kind of chaotic because it's a lot of button mashing and craziness. But you also do kind of have an idea of like how your players work together. How does Wolverine's powers mix with a Cyclops who long distance, whereas Wolverine is front lines, crushing guys left and right, berserker attacks, and Cyclops where you more have the ranged attacks and laser beams and stuff like that, or you have the Hulk who's same thing, like
exactly, has
huge monster.
I absolutely think about that all the time in D&D as well. It's where, hey, you're playing a cleric and he's playing a druid. Those are both wisdom like heavy classes. I need to play something that balances the team more in case we come across something that's going to require dexterity. Where optimizing your team and building your party is also a very important element. Not to say that there's definitely something fun about everyone going into the same like archetype and then just mastering that archetype and solving everything with intelligence or whatever. Yeah, that's fun too.
Just build 6 clerics.
Yeah, exactly.
Just build six clerics and have a party that they're all following different gods, and then they're all just doing different things. You can have that would be a fun campaign, but anyway,
it just creates such a different dynamic.
Yeah,
we were all, let's say, all barbarians. It's like, how do we solve any problem other than fighting? Yeah, and that's fun for the DM too, to be like, you guys didn't, think your way out of this. How do you get past this stone door? It's like, you can't pick the lock, you can't magically open it, And so
surely there's someone we could talk to.
The balance, exactly. You have no charisma now. You're a terrible barbarian who just has strength.
Oh, I just
so like there's a beautiful balance of like, no, we need to rely on each other in the party and creating that team composition, and if you are optimized in one thing, like Michael's character wants to be super strength, and you're optimizing that, it's like, okay, let's get some diversity in here, and I'll play something that doesn't need as much strength. So
are there ever teams in competition? But like, can you set up a game that way where you have a few different groups where this this group of 2 or 3 versus this other one, or even a third group, and then the dungeon master kind of playing these different things together?
Yeah, I've definitely done stuff like that.
I've heard about it.
Yeah, I've definitely done stuff like that where my brother created a party of 4 and we were a party of 4, and he controlled all the other ones, and they were made to like perfectly counterbalance us, and it was up to like we were it was an equivalent fight. It was 4v4, all player characters, all the same level, but it came to us using our skills and thinking wisely in the combat that helped us to actually overcome the fight. But there's also PvP stuff too. Michael and I's character have fought just as like a skirmish in a game, and so you can extend that to any level. Interdimensional Coliseum is a game that we play where we don't have a campaign like full length in mind, but we just want to practice combat with each other.
You ever watch Interdimensional? Oh, sorry. Did you ever watch Interdimensional Cable on Rick and Morty? It was kind of like just all different like bits and stuff. It wasn't necessarily canon for the rest of the show. It's a bit like that. That's the idea, is that like the Interdimensional Coliseum is just a place where characters from any character can just be plopped down into it and ran through a combat. And it's mostly PvP focused, because that is not a thing that is part of normal campaigns typically. because it is sometimes more player versus the environment where you're like working together as a team.
Yeah.
But it is also fun sometimes to be like, could my character kick your character's ass? And
that just happened last week, and I totally kicked your character's ass.
Yeah,
tell me more.
You know,
so
I almost
Michael has a character in one of his games. It's a cleric.
Yeah.
Big on spell casting and stuff. And he was mentioning that a bunch of bards had like charmed everyone and got a king assassinated or something. And I'm like, hey, my bard's pretty high level. I bet that I could just pretend to be one of the bards and play in your guys' game, but that wasn't going to happen. And then I started egging him on, like, I bet my bard could kick your cleric's ass. And then it kept going. And so I leveled down my character to match his character's level. And I got away with like 10 hit points or something by the end of it, but I did kick your ass.
It was really interesting playing a cleric in a 1v1 fight, because clerics are very focused on like buffing their teammates, and that is something that I mostly do with my cleric, like
healing
and like buffing and stuff like that. Clerics don't necessarily have as good like single target control or damage spells. So, and also it was a really good session, because it was like, well, if my character did get cornered and was in a one-on-one fight, what would I do, you know? And I got the benefit of like when we started that up, I like tailored a spell list that I thought would be good, but then I realized during that combat that there were certain combos that I thought worked that did not work. And that's kind of the benefit of the Interdimensional Coliseum too, is sometimes you can test out ideas before actual gameplay and see like, does this idea work, or is there a flaw with my plan here, you know? Because I had an idea where I cast a couple of spells. One of them's like an aura of a damaging thing that is centered on me, and then I would also cast a spell on myself that would give disadvantage on attack rolls that made against me. But it turns out the moment that my aura damages somebody, the sanctuary spell, the one that protects me, would disappear. And I didn't realize that those two things interacted that way.
It's a great play test, actually. I mean, it works great for just like, because we're not actually enemies in real life, so I could give him advice on his character of like, wait, hold on, that's not going to work because you're doing this other thing. And
can also figure out what things are DM interpretation. That's true. Like when you come into a situation where you're unsure how it works, and you just kind of have to like, oh, okay, well, I guess this is how we'll roll it this time. But that's an interesting note for sometimes different effects have things that need to be interpreted by your DM.
Tyler, a little bit ago you mentioned leveling down so you could match and fight with Michael's character. Can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I brought in a bard that I play in another campaign with another group of people, my brother and our friends online. So they're already level 13 characters out of a possible 20, because we've been playing them for almost 2 years. And so Michael's campaign with his roommates and his friends at his table, they're like level 8 or 9. I think they're 8. Level 8.
It's 8.
And so I didn't want to have the unfair advantage of way more hit points, way more spells, all these things that I've unlocked over the last 5 levels. And so I just made a copy of that character because it's on the online D&D Beyond system. And then just leveled it down to level 8. So I'm at that proper hit points, the proper kind of equivalent.
Even playing field.
Even playing field, just with my different class and different, abilities and spells. It basically pulled back a little bit.
Sure.
Like, let's go back to before I was, fighting dragons.
But it's not something you would do in game. You wouldn't do an in-game level down necessarily. This is because you were bringing a character from another game.
Correct. Yeah,
that's a lot more rare. Yeah, that's a lot more rare in 5th edition. It did happen in previous editions of the game, but not as much in 5th edition. And it really sucked in previous editions of the game. You got to get negative levels in third edition, which is what I cut my teeth on. and that was like something that like a lot of undead creatures would do against you. Like vampires could literally suck the life out of you, and that would be like negative levels that you would have to like get restored back to you. So you would lose your ability to fight as you're fighting the vampire.
That's super cool though.
It was super cool. Glad it's not in the game anymore because it sucks.
Yeah, but I can see that.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, I'll go. I was just gonna say, there's certain things, like let's take the Warlock, for example. They specifically get their magic powers from like creating a deal with some kind of extraplanar entity. So let's say it's giving you a command, hey, go steal from this guy, or go attack your friend. It's like, as a player, I'm not going to do that. And he says, okay, I'm cutting off all your powers. Suddenly you're not a warlock anymore. Suddenly you're a commoner with your stats, and you've got. So there is certain circumstances where the DM can create things for it to happen.
Level a character down to.
Okay, yeah. Actually, now that you've mentioned that, in that campaign where I'm playing that cleric, we're dealing with a situation where the paladin got shot with like a bullet, and the bullet severed that paladin's connection to their deity. And so they don't have any of their paladin class features right now. They only have like the martial weapon focus and
That's
stuff.
great. Okay.
Sword. Yeah.
Yeah, they have the ability to swing a sword and wear armor and stuff, but all of their like divine smite, divine sense, all their spellcasting abilities, all their aura abilities, none of that. Their tie to their god has been completely severed, and we're trying to figure out what happened as part of that campaign. Yeah.
That's super fun. That's a very good question, Anthony. I like that.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, go ahead.
Judicious use of that, like taking players' like abilities away. You have to have a lot of trust with your DM, but it can be a lot of fun if you
good storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You brought up the D&D Beyond system. Is that something we talked about before?
We might have. It's an online system. There's an app for it as well. It's great for creating characters because they just take the rules and import them into this site. So it kind of like helps you to remember everything and lays everything out nicely for you. Like, here's all the things I can do as an action. Here's all the things I can do as a reaction when certain things happen. Here's all of my stats. Here's all of my skills. It's just all on one page.
It's a digital character sheet.
Character sheet.
That's great.
All the notes, anything in the background you want to note, any features you've got over the course of the campaign.
It's officially supported by Wizards of the Coast as well, which is the company that owns D&D. So it's an official. It used to be a sort of unofficial product that someone had made, but they were acquired by D&D, and now they are a fully official product.
And you can actually buy full-on books digitally on D&D Beyond, and then instead of like looking through the books of like where's that rule on the unarmed strikes, you could just type in unarmed strikes and pull out and pull up anything that you bought and all the adventures and sources and characters and whatever. So,
I don't know if they actually have a control find feature, and that's kind of a bummer.
Well, they've got the search bar, is what I meant.
You just search on the internet, I guess, or on the search bar. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Never mind. They have that. Yeah.
So I did kind of want to pause and kind of switch over to sports talk.
Yeah.
Because I feel bad for our sports listeners listening to 45 minutes of D&D
it has
only.
been a lot of. I've thought about that too, but I was like so engaged. So anyway.
I would love to, as we switch gears, I'm super parched. I would love to take a drink of water right now. So if we don't mind pausing real quick, we'll be back in just a moment.
Sounds good.
Is this where I go take a shit?
Yes.
Well, I can do it between episodes if you guys want.
No, it's okay. We'll edit this out. Welcome back, shit man. I hope that was an okay segue. I was just trying to see if we what we do with a hard break in the middle.
Welcome back, everybody. We just had a small break. I had to use the restroom really bad, and Tyler did a great job of putting us into a.
Yeah, that was a great segue. That was a great segue from Tyler and from Tony. I appreciate it. Yeah.
So I was on the toilet, and I get done with my break, and I realize that there's no toilet paper. So I had to call my girlfriend to bring me toilet paper. So I don't know if you guys saw her walk by with and it wasn't just one roll. She brought a 6-pack. Package.
Yeah, I saw.
I don't know if you guys saw that go down in our break, which I hope has been edited out at this point.
Yeah, let's not forget to edit episode 5.
Yeah, I did see that. I didn't want to ask questions, but yeah.
I didn't put.
But now my questions have been answered.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing.
I wiped myself, but
good job.
Yeah, good. I'm glad I so expertly dodged that, and then we just bring it straight to you're taking it. Yeah, great. Fantastic. We're here to segue over to sports now.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about like team composition and like building your team around players, and that's, I feel like, absolutely transferable to sports. But I'll offer it to you, Anthony, if there's anything sports related you wanted to talk about today or make us aware of, enlighten us.
Sure. I just want to follow up, I guess, from our previous episode about talking about National Football League NFL running backs and how they're putting their bodies on the line. They have the ball most often, other than a quarterback. They're but they're used as a battering ram in a lot of ways. But they score a ton of points. They're extremely important. We talked about fantasy football and how depending on how your league is set up, but in many cases, running backs are some of the best and earliest players that you would draft.
Yeah.
And so we talked about a little bit about contracts and how the running back is kind of getting screwed over in many ways, and they're one of the most important players, but getting paid less than kickers on average. But there's some caveats to that. But just some stuff just over the last week plus. I think we recorded our last show 10 days ago, but these are some of the top running backs in the NFL and things that are going on since or involved around the time that we recorded. But Jonathan Taylor was second in MVP voting over the last 2 years. He's probably the best running back in the NFL, has requested a trade because the Indianapolis Colts will not pay him enough or what he's worth. The Los Angeles Chargers running back, one of the best running backs, Austin Eckler, I forget how it's pronounced. But,
Eckler?
Eckler. There you go. Eckler. Thank you.
Yeah.
He's requested a trade. Same thing. It's contract situation. Saquon Barkley, one of the best running back prospects and best running backs, and brought a kind of a crappy team to the playoffs last year in the New York Giants. He's there's a minor holdout or wasn't able to come to a contract agreement with the Giants. The Las Vegas Raiders, Josh Jacobs, he's holding out for a new deal. Tony Pollard, the top running back on the Cowboys, wanted a new deal. They used the franchise tag, which is basically just saying like, we're going to use you for 1 year and that he'll get paid more. For the next few years because of that.
What happened?
You froze for a second.
I did. You did for a second. Yeah.
Oh, am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah.
Okay.
We missed you.
I was so engaged.
2 top running backs had to take pay cuts. Joe Mixon, as well as the Packers' Aaron Jones, took pay cuts. You've got 2 of the best running backs from the last couple years, Kareem Hunt and then Leonard Fournette, who's a 2-time Super Bowl winner.
Yeah,
they're both unsigned. They don't even have teams right now. So you have 4 top running backs that don't have teams, whether they were released or their contract ended, and people are like, running backs just aren't that valuable. So these are some big names. They're huge.
These are some big names. Yeah. Because I'm only a somewhat knowledgeable person in the realm of football. And these are a lot of like the big names from like the last couple of years of fantasy football that I recognize,
Yeah, the last 4 to 5 years, and even beyond that with some of the guys. But the last 4 to 5 years, that's like the cream of the crop, top NFL running backs in the league. And other than a few, Derrick Henry here or there, or, some of these other guys who did get paid on the rare occasion. But just pretty wild stuff and how that's all gonna formulate. And you can tell that over the next year or two, when they do a new agreement, we talked about the Players Association versus the owners basically in the NFL. There will be a major change into how running backs are paid whether that means they get paid a lot more out of the draft, since teams will draft them and then never pay more money to them, or draft new ones every couple of years, that maybe their first contracts get increased quite a bit to even some of that stuff out that's happening right now.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow, those are some big changes. It's crazy, like how many different industries are, like demanding changes from their employers.
Sure, bring up
just
SAG.
around.
Yeah.
SAG strike, a year or two ago there was the train operators, the Teamsters union, that they were trying to argue for better pay, which I still think they should have got. As a former train employee myself, I think they definitely should have gotten some benefits there.
As a former passenger, I agree.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a whole thing. I was in freight anyway. I think the freight people
deserve compensation.
I mean, yeah.
Right.
I mean, Amtrak is pretty cush as far as I know, at least comparatively to freight work. But yeah, because I mean, I think I don't know. Never mind. We don't have to talk about trains. But yeah, that's wild.
Not the train podcast. Michael.
It really
no.
I was trying to. You're bringing it up.
Stop talking about trains.
Okay, I have one more thing to say about trains. No. Yeah, that's crazy. And so when will we hear, like, do we know when we'll hear like resolution on what's going on here, or is it's all in the works right now?
So just my opinion, I guess, of how this will shake out is that over the next month or two, there will be injuries to running backs. This happens every time, every year. It's just inevitable. That's just how it goes. Once again, they have the ball most often, other than the quarterback. There's going to be injuries to running backs. That's how it goes. That's why these guys want to get paid more.
Yeah.
So I think you'll see a lot of the guys who are unsigned sign deals. I think they'll be probably less than they want, and the team will probably end up paying a little bit more than they want for a few of these guys. Mm-hmm. But then over the next year or two, maybe even next offseason, you're going to see a major difference in how running backs and their agents negotiate contracts with the NFL until there is a new agreement between the Players Association and the owners. That will be one of the biggest things that they argue about, to the point where maybe a minor lockout takes place the next time there is the collective bargaining agreements are on the table.
What does that mean?
Basically, yep, everything would shut down. There would be no practices, no games, no whatever. This is something that would usually happen early in the summer to midsummer, and so it might delay preseason, or maybe the NFL, this has happened a time or two before, where they've had to shift the league back a week or two, depending on.
Is it just a strike?
Basically, I mean, or they just don't have an agreement. So if there's no contract in place for them to come together to play. Yeah. Okay. So I would say that's what will happen. And you might see a lot of these guys just hold out and basically not play and say, yeah, I'm supposed to make whatever, $4 to $7 million this year. I'm going to just not play. You can keep my money, and then until something is resolved, or you're going to offer me what I think I'm worth, or I'm going to sit out this whole season until there's a better system in play. And like we said, like the guys I listed, that's cream of the crop. Yeah. All top talent and Pro Bowl.
The guys you don't want to miss out on. Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, I feel like I've heard of players individually doing stuff like this in previous years, and it's not always worked out for them.
It all depends. Yeah. And the teams in the NFL have so much control. I mean, if you can get hurt, they can cut you, and your contracts are not guaranteed. So one of the big arguments between the players and the owners is the guaranteed contracts, how much and how that all goes down. And so when you see a contract announced in football, you'll see, for a quarterback, something crazy like $45-50 million a season. But how much of that is guaranteed? Like, that'll be in parentheses in the next thing. Like, that's always a big thing, is $30 million guaranteed or whatever, because these
you
players,
get sacked
of course,
on the first game and you're out.
Exactly, and your career's over. What was your actual guaranteed money? Because that team, if you're not worth anything to them anymore, they're going to cut you. They're going to save a bunch of money, and they're not going to have to have that spot, I guess. Or there's just it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
That is nuts.
Yeah, baseball, however, fully guaranteed contracts. We're coming up on the baseball trade deadline over the next few days, which is a really exciting time to see teams. And now that more teams in baseball make the playoffs, it used to only be 4 teams. Years ago, it was 2 teams on each side, but now it's expanded. You have a few wild card spots. It's more like 12, I guess you could say.
Oh, that's cool.
So a lot more teams are in it, or have a chance to make the playoffs, which makes trade deadline a little bit crazy because you have to decide, is my team worth it that I'm going to go get a couple of better players from a worse team who's not in it? Or am I at that point where I should sell off some of my good players so I can let young players develop and then also get more young players for those currently MLB players, or how you work your minor league system, because there's 4 different levels of minor leagues before you even get to playing Major League Baseball. Like it is a process, and I think it takes more long-term planning in baseball than any other sport, as far as I'm concerned.
You kind of decide whether or not you're going to go the distance or like going to attempt to go.
Exactly. Or do we
make
stand pat?
sacrifices?
Yeah, so much of this is dependent on, okay, we've got this guy, but we only have him for this year or this year and next year. If we trade him now, we can get a lot more for him than we trade him when he only has a month or 2 left on his contract, or if you decide it's worth it. And teams will do that. They'll trade for a guy that they know they're only going to have for 2 months and hope that that's enough to get them into the playoffs, to the World Series. And then, of course, you have a chance to re-sign that player. But if you're a small market, smaller city team, a lot of those players are going to be worth bigger money to go to a Chicago team, an LA team, a New York team.
Yeah.
So if you're the Tampa Bay Rays or the Milwaukee Brewers, like some of these smaller teams, smaller markets, how do you compete it's different in baseball where there is no salary cap. So in basketball and football, there's a limit to how much each team can spend on players. Or at least in basketball, you can go over it, but you get fined a crazy amount of money. It's called the luxury tax. But in baseball, the Yankees can spend every year as much money as they want to, as much money as their budget allows them to.
That's the problem.
Classically, that's the thing, is that they're like the big money team because they're in a big money. They're in the big money state. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's like a known meme, I guess, almost about them, kind of like just an idea that like they're the big money bankers of the baseball thing.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of
that's weird. That's interesting that they've solved that issue with the other sports, but they have yet to address that in baseball. Because of the major sports in America, it seems like baseball is like one of the longer running ones. I know football started. It's definitely because it's like, that's another meme about baseball, is that it's a 1800s game, and now that Tyler and I have kind of gone to a game more recently and seen that they've done things to modernize the pace of the game, at least for modern audience. That's really interesting that they haven't addressed maybe one of the more competitive balance issues of the game. That's what Moneyball was all about too, right?
That's a good movie.
Yes,
it was a really good movie, and for a lot of maybe halfway sports fans, maybe kind of like myself, it was a really interesting look into a shift that happened in baseball where they were
doing things differently, and
choosing where the money was going and how they would spend their money differently.
I thought it was very interesting.
How accurate for a sports fan was Moneyball? Do you know?
I love that you brought this up.
Okay.
There's So I think there's so many different things and ways to attack this.
Yeah, I can see the mind, the wheels is turning right now.
As a movie fan, I find it fun, entertaining. And then part of me as a baseball fan likes that. I mean, Brad Pitt as Billy Beane and just some of the stuff, and Chris Pratt as Hatterberg. I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff in there. There's fun performances. It's a good movie. It's a well-written movie, and it's a very good book as well. And a lot of this comes from the book Moneyball.
Oh,
and
interesting.
I think they did a good job of bringing what the book is to the screen. And here are the big issues with this and the Oakland Athletics that year. So they talk about how they made this major shift, and instead of, how are they going to spend their tiny budget compared to the Angels, the Los Angeles teams, the Dodgers, the Angels, the New York teams, whatever. And the whole idea is they go after guys who maybe they don't hit a ton, but they can draw walks. Or how do you use a player? What do you use as your stat to decide? And it was more analytics, statistical driven on more like nerdy things, and as opposed to just watching like this guy crushes the ball, or it was more data driven, right? And how can you also get the most out of a player when you can only spend this much, and how do you do that? So all of that I think is fun and well and good, and I love the story and the idea. There are 4 players that they do not mention in that book or in the movie at all. And maybe you see one of them with their jersey in the background playing shortstop, but they don't really go into these players at all. These 4 players are their 4 best players that year. One of them was an MVP shortstop, Miguel Tejada, never mentioned in the movie. Then they also had 3 top line starting pitchers, 3 of the best starting pitchers in baseball at the time. You never hear about them. Barry Zito, Mark Mulder, and Tim Hudson. Those are the 3. And they all 3 went on to get big contracts somewhere else. Mark Mulder got money on the Cardinals. Tim Hudson went to go get money in Atlanta. Barry Zito, it's funny that, I don't know, the whole idea was like he kind of looked like Johnny Depp and they thought he could be an actor. He went to basically just across the bridge from Oakland to San Francisco and got a bunch of money to play for the Giants. But these are their 4 best players who are not mentioned at all. And those are really the 4 players who brought them to the playoffs and to being that fun story that they were. And I get that the book and the movie are about Billy Beane and his style of what, and that kind of culture shift in baseball and what front office executives and scouts were looking for, which is a great story. But to not tell the part, like that as
the defensive part too. Yeah. They mentioned only like this guy gets on base. What does that mean? He gets runs. They only talked about offense and like, can the guy hit, or like, can he hit singles, or can he get walked? But I don't think they talked much at all about defense, with how important pitchers are for defense and making sure other people don't run. And like you said, that shortstop is obviously,
I think he was MVP
on the field.
Year.
Who prevents things from happening, prevents runners from getting on bases. So that's interesting.
So as a movie fan, I think it is very fun and entertaining. And people will say it's one of the better baseball movies. As like a baseball purist, if I want to use that term, that part I've always had an issue with, and what holds it for me from being not as high as Sandlot to me. Is the best baseball movie and one of my favorite movies. To me, it's the best kids movie too, but it's for anybody. Major League is up there, and there's a number of other great baseball movies, but those to me are kind of my top 2. But Moneyball is still such a good movie, and I love that they did at least tell this story. I mean, them doing the movie was better than them not doing it all. And if you're comparing it to the book, they did what the book said. They were those 3 pitchers.
Have you read?
Not mentioned. Some here and there. Like, I'm familiar with the book. I would never tell you that I read the whole thing.
Gotcha.
In that era, I would have read like Game of Shadows, which was like the behind the scenes of what was going on with Barry Bonds' steroid usage, who he bought it from, and some of the other people involved in the major steroid scandal, and how that all went down, which is very, and it was actually 2 San Francisco Chronicle reporters, Mark Fainruwada, I can't think of the other guy's name, but it was 2 reporters who were following the Giants around that era, or were journalists in San Francisco, like following that, wrote that book, and they decided to do more than just an article. They were like, they had so much stuff that they made this book, Game of Shadows. They go into other track athletes too, but Barry Bonds is really, and some other baseball stars as well, Gary Sheffield, but Barry Bonds is really the major one. But Game of Shadows from that same era, from that same era as the Moneyball book, was the one that I was more paying attention to and own still.
Yeah. That's really interesting, and like it makes me think like there's so many more stories in baseball or just in sports in general that we haven't seen a good sports movie in a little while, at least one that I can think of. What's the last good sports movie that you can think of?
That is a really good question. I might have to hold on to that one. We'll
bookmark that for next time.
Let's bookmark that one. I will just say this. My friend, this will be also my plug for Ant and Rabbit, another show that I do with my buddy Jameson Rabbit. He's the movie review guy. He is my top review guy. He hosts Real Reviews. He goes to movies for free. He reviews them for a TV show back in Wisconsin.
What a job.
It's also on YouTube. He's the man, and he's kind of my trust. He goes up to over 200 movies a year and ranks them all. God. I mean, he is the go-to movie guy. Check out Jameson Rabbit, Rabbit with 2 T's, and check out Ant and Rabbit. He will tell you the movie that involves our area here in Beaverton, Hillsborough area, the movie Air with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, kind of about the backstory of the Jordan shoe. I haven't seen it yet. It is, I think, on Prime streaming right now. But Jameson Rabbit, like I said, my go-to movie guy. Love this man and follow his reviews and things like that, and pretty close in step with what he thinks about things. He thinks Air is so far one of the best movies of the year. So that to me, and now it's more about shoes than it is necessarily basketball. So there is some,
but it's about Jordan as well.
There's a relation there. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And like how influential that deal was between Michael Jordan and the Air shoes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how I feel about a bunch of these movies that are coming out that just kind of seem like long commercials, almost in a way, where it's like Air, Tetris, some of these other movies that are coming out.
I've heard good things about Tetris. There's a Beanie Baby one that just came out. I
don't know.
With Zach Galifianakis without a beard. It's on Apple TV.
I don't know if I'm into it.
That's nuts.
Coming from the podcast that's all beards, I don't know.
It's very bearded. Very bearded.
Yeah.
Beard check podcast.
Beard check. I don't know. Maybe that's just me being a little bit of a snooty kind of person.
No, that's fair. Would you throw Mario into that conversation as well, or is that a little bit different?
Mean,
just thinking about the games and the toys that they're going to sell from that. Oh, boy.
I mean, obviously that's what it was. It was kind of just a long ad commercial for Mario. Yeah, I mean, I still watched it, but it was very much still in the like, I'll see it when it comes out on streaming. Maybe I didn't need to see it like right away. Like, it's not the craziest thing for me.
You pirate it.
I don't know. I don't know about that. It was on Disney or something, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. All right.
Yeah. Movie theaters are dying because of you, bro.
I've seen a lot of movies in the theaters this year for a normal person, I think. I've seen a lot of movies in theaters this year. I saw, we don't have to get into that. It's fine.
I saw Spider-Man.
Yeah, we did see Spider-Man.
That's all I know.
Yeah. I've been to more movies this year than I have
I saw the D&D
this entire decade combined, but I mean, you throw the pandemic in there, that's
it throws off a lot. Yeah.
The stats are down for movies.
Should we do a vibe check and get out of here?
Yeah,
sure.
All right,
plug it up.
Michael, what's your shirt before we get to the vibe check?
I'm wearing a Death Save shirt like I usually do. This one, it's I don't know if this is a specific character or not, or if it's just a cool design. It just says Death Saves at the top in green, and then it just has like a Snake Lich or something, some sort of undead character.
And I will say, you normally wear black, so the morning session you're wearing white, it all kind of makes sense, but it's still D&D related. Good for you.
I do normally wear black.
Every recording sesh, and I try to switch up the color every time. My shirt is red. That's all I got.
Awesome. Yeah.
Anthony, what's your shirt? It looks black so
plain
far.
Black. Yep. Just like all of our favorite comedians, just plain black.
There you go.
That's amazing.
Boom.
Let's roll out.
All right, here we go.
Here we go. Yeah. Rolling.
This is one of my luckier dice.
Not so lucky for me.
What'd you get? 4? 6?
6er.
I got 14. So I'll take us out of here.
We're just the low rollers today, I guess.
Yeah. You're warming up though. I can tell. Okay, so we're about to sign off for the Athletics Check podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation we had about D&D and sports. This time we will be back shortly with some more talks for next time. I would just like to say before we go, I'd like to plug our Discord, which is coming, should be live here very shortly. It's the Athletics Check podcast. Look for us on Discord. We also are on YouTube at Athletics Check. You can find some shorts soon on TikTok from Athletics Check 101. And you can always email us your questions at athletics101@gmail.com. Anthony, what would you like to plug?
You know what? Last time I threw shade at The Office, and I'm going to say that you guys should watch it.
All right.
Around. You've had character
American
development
or British?
American
or British or both?
Start with, you know what? Go with. You've already seen The Office. Go with the British version, which of course I've never seen. So I'm terrible.
Yeah.
You gotta like British humor. It's almost the same.
Yeah. Tyler, what would you like to plug for us this time?
I'm gonna plug UVG because we talked about it. UVG, Ultraviolet Grasslands and the Black City. Luca
Reyes.
Where is it? It's on that side.
It definitely doesn't look like it's pronounced that way, but he's Slovenian, I think, and his name, I believe, is pronounced Luca Reyes.
Yeah. It's a really fun setting. It's a really fun system if you use their system. Lots of crazy, fun, psychedelic adventures to be had. Lots of stories to be told. Check it out at your local game store if they have it. Skim through it and see if it's the right role-playing game for you.
I definitely highly recommend it. And like I said, I don't know. It's either Slovakia or Slovenia, and I don't remember which, and I'm going to get flamed in the comments for not knowing. Anyway, yes, thank you so much, and we'll catch you guys next time on Athletics Check. Goodbye.
Peace.